Welcome. We are the Filmmaker's Cookbook, a podcast where we turn your favorite films into recipes, helping you expand your cinematic diets. My name is Michelangelo White, and I'm joined with my co-host,
Charles Halbeck.
and we are also today joined with a very special guest. I would like to introduce a good friend of mine, O'Neill.
Hi, I'm O'Neill Henry.
Well, yeah, nice to have you, O'Neill. Cool. Well, what do you do? Who are you?
Who am I? That is a deep existential question. I'm O'Neill Henry. I'm a filmmaker, podcaster, just sort of jack of all trades type. I have a couple of podcasts. I have like my own side company. I mainly do sound and post-production stuff. So
Cool. Nice. Well, it's cool to have you aboard, and quickly, maybe I should talk about our very thorough science
Yes,
in terms
please.
of
Please do.
how we determine flavors and sort of that, and translate this. So so have you ever watched Pixar's Inside Out?
I have not. That's the one I have not.
Well,
I know it all
okay.
though. If you just
Gotcha. Well, there's
through
pretty
cultural
much
osmosis.
there's the 5 core emotions. Happy, sad, fear, disgust, anger.
Mhm.
We actually added a 6th one, surprise, which I think some list kind of include surprise as one of the core emotions. We took those 6 and we kind of translated them into flavors.
Okay.
So, for instance, we have surprise, which would be not a flavor. Actually, let me start with the other end because.
Yeah.
That'd be a terrible start. Be like, are you going to say flavors? Then he's going to say that's not even a core.
That's not even a flavor.
So we got so sweet will be
Mhm.
happy.
Okay.
We have salty, which is sad. We have bitter, which is fear.
Okay.
Sour, which is disgust. And we
Okay.
have umami or savory as anger.
Okay.
And then surprise is kind of like a pseudo 6th emotions. We put a pseudo 6th flavor as surprise is spicy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because I feel like movies have like a little spice to them.
Yeah.
So
I think surprise is very much the spice of movies these days. I
Yeah,
think that's
definitely.
sort of what
and
studios bank on.
it could be spicy in terms of hot, or it could be spicy in terms of like the
Cinnamon.
flavor, like cinnamon or different things that could be spicy,
Mhm.
quotes, air quotes, but not exactly hot. And then also a lot of these combinations together can make different flavors and outcomes in the end, like combining sweet and salty or something like that. I think same thing how movies kind of do. So
Yeah, definitely.
so yeah, that's kind of like a little bit peek behind. It's very basic. I feel like,
Yeah,
but
it makes sense.
I think it's like a good way to talk about films and talk about movies.
Mhm.
It's more of like the broad idea of it. Also, Donald Glover, he recently did an interview recently in terms of this recording, where he interviewed himself, and he also talked about comparing food and TV shows to movies. Wait, sorry, TV shows and movies to food. So he like compared his show and like Euphoria and different shows, and he kind of was like, what would these TV shows be in terms of food? So I just want to say that we had this idea before Charlie had that interview.
TM.
So
Yeah.
I mean, if Donald Glover would be a guest on this podcast, that would be amazing.
We'd love
too.
to have you.
I think he owes you, right, for stealing your idea.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Exactly.
So Danny, get out here.
I think if that would be, my life would be complete after that episode. That would be the last episode we do.
Cut it.
Because
Print
it could not get better than after that. Yeah, that'd be
it
it.
ends right there.
So, what movie is important to you? That's the main question we want to ask you. Because mainly we're gonna be talking about film, and then we're gonna talk about food, and that's kind of what we like here. So,
well, I think you probably by the episode title you could probably tell, but Into the Spider-Verse is my favorite animated film.
In your universe, there's only one Spider-Man. But there is another universe. It looks and sounds like yours, but it's not.
I already forgot who directed it, so...
well, don't worry.
I have that
forgot the
information.
director's name.
It is directed by 3 people.
Yes.
Bob Persichetti, Peter Ramsey, and Rodney Rothman.
And I believe 2 of those are from the Lego movie, correct? One of them.
No.
No? Oh, man.
It was written by Phil Lord
The writers.
and Rodney Rothman.
Oh man, I'm terrible with that.
Well, I think it's an easy thing to mistake because it does feel like a Lord and Miller production. Because Lord and Miller made the Lego movie.
Yes.
They made the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and they made the Mitchells versus the Machines, all of which I think heavily feature similar, maybe not similar aesthetics, but aesthetics inspired by a similar perspective on filmmaking.
Do you know much about, Neil, about the directors of this movie?
I'm what you call a terrible human being, and so I know very little bit about the creators behind this work, other than I know that the art director obviously had a big comic book background, and you can tell that just by every single frame of this film being like exactly
like a comic book. Yeah. It's definitely really stylized, and it definitely shows like it watches like you're reading a comic book. Yeah. I just want to say one thing that I thought was really cool about it was that specifically about Peter Ramsey, that he became the first African American to direct a major animated feature film in America, which is Rise of the Guardians.
Oh, really? He was. Oh, I did know that about Peter Ramsey. Yes, I did know he directed Rise of the Guardians. I didn't know he was the first. This was the first animated studio film.
African American directed a major animated feature film. Yeah,
that's insane.
Yeah, and then he was the first African American to be nominated and also win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature Film.
For Rise of the Guardians, or was it for
No, sorry. For this movie.
Oh, for this one, yes, of course. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Wow. That's Rise of the Guardians came out fairly recently in American cinema history.
I know, right? 2012.
2012, and he was the first. Oh, Boise. Not looking great for American history, but I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely another. Yeah, that's definitely a whole topic right there. It's kind of, in a way, it's like great, but at the same time it's kind of sad that's like this is really recent stuff. Like, how is this
very recent
happening?
And featured no people of color as part of the main cast
in Rise of the Guardians. Oh yeah, no. you only get one.
Wait,
you get one.
Rise of the Guardians is like.
It's about Santa Claus.
It's about Jack Frost and Santa
Avengers,
Claus
the holiday special.
It's the Avengers holiday special. He does. That is actually kind of a through line. He does do a lot of the what is it called when you have multiple ensemble films? Yeah, it's very.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely one of those as well, right?
Yeah.
And they're also kind of like, I mean, superhero-y kind of like action kind of.
Definitely.
So, yeah, so I guess, but you were saying that director isn't really the main thing.
Well,
Jay.
Now that you've brought that up, which I didn't know, because I also am a terrible person, apparently. But one of the things that is kind of key to a movie like this is being able to introduce characters very quickly. And he clearly has shown talent at that on multiple movies now. So, I mean, this movie lives or dies on you being able to form an immediate connection with like 6 characters.
Yes. Are we just hopping into the movie, or did you want to get like a brief synopsis?
We should probably
introduce the movie. Yeah.
The movie is Spider-Man.
Super speed Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. No, Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse. I mean, Spider-Verse, excuse me. It was released in 2018. And the IMDb summary is teen Miles Morales becomes the Spider-Man of his universe and must join with 5 spider-powered individuals from other dimensions to stop a threat for all realities.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is the IMDb.
That's spoiler free. That's actually
summary.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
It has a rating of 8.4 out of 10 on IMDb, which is spectacularly high.
Yes.
And it is the 198th movie on the Movie Meter, which is pretty high for IMDb movies. And then I also have the Rotten Tomatoes summary, if we would like that, which is bitten by a radioactive spider in the subway, Brooklyn teenager Miles Morales suddenly develops mysterious powers that transform him into the one and only Spider-Man. When he meets Peter Parker, he soon realizes that there are many others who share his special high-flying talents. Miles must now use his newfound skills to battle the evil Kingpin, a hulking madman who can open portals to other universes and pull different versions of Spider-Man into our world.
That's a little more
spoiler.
Yeah, a little bit spoiler. Yeah.
And also, makes it seem like Kingpin has like powers, which
I mean, he is
Money is
a
kind
big
of powerful.
man.
he's super power, like
Like Batman,
strong.
you know, superpower. Like
And-
money can be
Yeah,
a power too, I
Yeah.
guess.
and I think he is supposed to be like super intelligent as well, but
I mean, he's got super strength, right? He has
Right.
to.
Yeah.
I think he
he literally
caught a
crushes
car.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, spoiler. I don't know where you guys give your spoiler warnings, but
Yeah.
that's the
We
first
don't
10
really.
minutes.
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
well,
Let's
that's
just
fair.
we'll say this that I feel like if our mentality behind it is that if you haven't watched the movie, then like you don't need to maybe listen to this because I feel like like I think tiptoeing around spoilers.
Mhm.
I feel like doesn't. It's kind of like when you eat something. It's like all right, but you can't smell it and you can't look at
That's
it.
fair. That's
It's
fair.
like you can't experience it completely without
Mhm.
like completely just talking about it.
That's fair, and it has been out for 4 years. to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
fair. That
Which is also something that I feel like we're going to be mostly talking about movies that have been out for at least a little time, like
Yeah.
a while. So
makes sense.
already we talked about a few things, and I feel like we can kind of start translating
Yeah.
that. But I really want to know kind of your take on like your emotions or because I think seeing the movie for myself, I'll kind of give a brief kind of introduction to my experience
Mhm.
watching it. I remember going to the movie theater like all of myself, and I remember I just signed up for AMC A-List.
Yep. It was right around then.
And then like
Movie Pass crashed, and then AMC came out of the ashes.
yeah, exactly. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna go see movies even if I see them alone. So I booked it in Dolby. I was like maybe one of the only people in the movie theater for some
Mhm.
reason, and I watched it and I was like completely blown away. Like
Yeah.
I was not expecting the movie. Like I mean, I like Spider-Man a lot, so I
Mhm.
feel like I was like, all right, I'm gonna watch it. It's gonna be fun. I didn't expect myself to enjoy it that much. Also, seeing it on that screen and just like
Yeah.
visually seeing it
Oh God.
was
yeah.
like so amazing, and the music and the mixing and the audio design like also was just really cool, just especially in the movie theater, and just like hearing all those sounds
Mm.
was just amazing. And I remember going at home being like, that was actually a really good movie. I can't believe that just came out of nowhere.
The music, especially, we could do a whole other hour just on the music alone from this film because it's a banger. But yes, the theater experience was probably one of those once in a lifetime things. Also, just in the context of 2018, we had Black Panther at the beginning of the year, then we had Infinity War middle of the year, and then we had this movie at the end of the year. So 2018 was like just a banger for the theater experience for superhero movies, and it was just such a charged energy. I mean, it still is, right? If you go to a movie theater, especially like opening week of any superhero movie, you're going to feel that energy, but just like you could feel the audience's riled up energy for this
Yeah,
film.
I think there's nothing. Sorry, I Chase, you're about to say something.
Yeah.
but
I was just going to say, I do think it was a bit of a surprise coming from Sony, because Sony animated films have had kind of not a great rap over the last several years.
Mm.
They did make the Emoji Movie, which
That was them, wasn't it?
that was them.
That was a
Several
cash
of
grab
the
for this
same people on this project. And also, I think their Spider-Man movies had also taken a turn for the worst. And they were kind of the studio. No one was looking for a superhero nor an animated movie from Sony.
Mhm.
And then I think maybe because of that, they were allowed to do whatever they wanted almost. And that allowed this group of people to make what is, I think, objectively one of the best animated and one of the best superhero movies separately of all time.
Definitely. I mean, it is still, even though we have No Way Home, it is still the best Spider-Man movie.
I think so as well.
I will say, watching it in theater and watching it like afterwards as well, there's actually like a few parts that are a little cringy to me. But other than that, like if you just take out those cringy moments, then I feel like this would be like probably my favorite as well. I think I just love a lot of the characters. I don't know. I do like all the extra Spider-Man, but with the core like 3, just had like such a great dynamic like between the characters of those 3 that I thought like I just want to see them more.
Yes.
I feel like that would be really cool. I mean, I guess they did focus on them the most.
Yeah.
But I just love those characters and how they were, a family in a way.
Yes. I really like, I don't know if the director's listening, but like really commend the director for giving each character their due respect and sort of their whole story beats. Like even the even the pig got like his closure at the end with like, I'm not just a cartoon, I'm serious. They did like a super great job of just like making you feel for each of these characters, even if they weren't, the main three. So
yeah, definitely.
I was watching a YouTube video actually in my preparation for this, and they talked about what made it possible to essentially emotionally connect every single character to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they brought up a really good point, which was reversals, and this idea of narrative reversals, and giving us a strong emotional attachment in one scene each time. Each time we had a character introduction, we would start off with one emotional flavor, if you will, and we would end with the complete opposite of that emotional flavor by the end of that scene. And like one instance would be going with like the villains, for instance. When we are first introduced to Doc Ock, she's kind of a goofy, character, and then immediately she turns into this massive threat.
Yeah.
In the span of like maybe a minute and a half.
Yes.
And it's, a great character introduction, even for a character who we literally get no backstory for whatsoever. All we know is the name Doc Ock, and we associate that with Molina's version of Doc Ock, which is legendary, of course.
Yes. Fantastic.
And this is not that Doc Ock, but it is still able to just strike fear in a really great way, which immediately makes you afraid of this character, but also like really interested in what they're going to do next, because you are caught between these two polar ends and you don't know which way they're going to go at any second.
Yeah, she is a very funny character, but also a very serious threat, and it's very funny. Even the way she goes, like she starts, like the scene specifically at the end where she is taken out it's like, oh no, here she comes, and then just taken out by something random as a comedy.
Bus
flies by, takes her out. It's her character dynamic is really good. I actually want to say on that note, this film does do really good with contrast, but it also does a really good job of foreshadowing all their things that come in, because pretty much right at the beginning of the film, you see Miles Morales going into the school that he's going to, Vision Middle School Academy, and one of the classes that he's in, Doc Ock, Olivia Octavius, in the thing as a scientist,
and all we see is Olivia.
Yes. Exactly. And so it does a really good job of like foreshadowing what is to come by giving you just in the back of your mind just a little bit more context about these characters, so when they throw them at you and it's not going to be there for long, you already sort of have something to latch on to.
And there are some really smart moments of writing which show you that these characters have whole backstories, even if they're just implied backstories. Like one of the lines, which is kind of just a throwaway line, is when Aunt May just says, "Oh, live."
Yes, exactly. And with that just one line, you know that they
had a whole backstory.
But even then, the foreshadowing was that she says, "My friends call me Liv." So you can automatically infer that they were friends at one point. And that's just amazing.
A half a second line.
Such good writing in this film.
I mean, I kind of think they almost reinvented CGI animation, pulling from older styles of animation. And I kind of think there's kind of two wings of animation right now. There's like the UPA style, which is like from the 1950s, which is all about abstraction. And it's like literally like shape people moving about in weird ways across the screen, all hand drawn. And then you have kind of the Pixar Disney animation, which is going as far in the realism direction as possible. And this one has somehow managed to take
the Z-axis.
Exactly. But like accomplishing both ends of that at the same time through a combination of, really good standard CGI realism animation with great character design, and then also the brilliance of the added hand-drawn bits that they added after that part was already made, which I think is what the genius of this film is. It almost reminds me of what's that Edgar Wright film? Shoot.
Scott Pilgrim.
Yes, Scott Pilgrim.
The Scott Pilgrim versus the World. It does have that.
That makes more sense.
Live action and comic book.
Yes.
Comic book aesthetics in a really intentional way.
Yes.
And this one, I think, does it even better than that.
Yeah, because it adds a story element too.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
even with Miles Morales being at a different frame rate, I believe, right?
Yes, that's
For-
the other thing is their play with frame rates was something that they got a lot of flack for when they were blasting out trailers, but like it plays so well with all these other characters and how each character has like a different frame rate and animation style. The Penny Parker, the Japanese character, is like this anime girl, and then you have the pig, which is like a cartoon, and then you have
Voiced beautifully
by Jonathan Mulaney.
Yeah.
And then Nick Cage's character, I forget. He's also Peter Parker.
Spider Noir.
Spider Noir. Thank
so
you.
Perfect. I love the Rubik's Cube. As a colorblind person myself, I feel the struggle.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of also reminds me of, like you're saying, like Disney, Pixar. I think they kind of have a realism, and I think I don't know too much about animation. I'm not an expert, but from my research, I remember reading that like they tend to do like a standard 24 frames per second animation, but it kind of reminds me how they did this movie, how like Japanese animation does, where they have like a
On the twos.
variable frame rate for different parts,
Yes.
which is really interesting. And it kind of like, it's an American film, I guess. Kind of, is it? Because Sony technically is a Japanese company.
Yeah, that's fair. It is. Well, it was, but the studio was Sony Animation, which I believe
is in Culver City.
Culver City, yeah. So
Yeah.
that is, I mean, as American as you get, but I haven't looked at who, like what kind of artists were on.
The team is all American.
It's all American.
Yeah,
But
okay.
I mean, technically, I feel like the company. So maybe there's like a little bit of a hint, like maybe there's like some kind of draw to Japan. But yeah, I was really interested that like it is like a step away from that traditional American animation style. Also adds a really cool like replay value, I guess, in a way. Like, you know, you don't just watch the movie and just go home and you never want to watch it again. Like you want to watch
new
it.
details.
Yeah,
Time.
definitely.
There's one scene that me and my friend love so much.
Is it Bagel?
Bagel, thank you. Yes, okay. Spider-Man and Peter B. Parker and Miles Morales are running out of the thing. He steals a bagel. He chucks the bagel, and just in the background, when Miles hits the person with the bagel, it just says "bagel," just in little tiny text.
Which is apparently the reason. I have a little factoid here is that an animator was told as a joke by one of the producers, just put bagel as the exclamation. And then I guess the meeting ended and they didn't get any clarification. So they took it seriously because they wasn't sure.
But it's so good.
And they just loved it so much. So they kept it in and it was perfect.
It's
nice.
There are so many small details like that and one-off lines that really don't have any value to the plot or the story, but just add that extra boost of just like, you love it. Another one is Nick Cage's line when he's hesitant. I forget specific. I think it was during his introduction of his character, but he's like, "I burned down the matches to my fingers just to feel something." Just a throwaway line in this collage of characters.
Honestly, I feel like that whole
funny. It's so good.
It kind of just felt like Nick Cage just being himself in the audio booth, just like saying random things.
Oh yeah.
Some of that is just the joy of having 5 years to work on something.
Yeah.
Which is something that the rest of the film industry doesn't really have the luxury of typically, unless you're working on something wild. Like I don't know, like,
I mean, in live action, I don't think anything would get 5 years unless it was
typically
tabled.
not.
Yeah.
Like there's like Boyhood who filmed over a 20-year period.
And I don't think they have throwaway lines in that.
Well, I think they have some level of experimentation, but not much. Not as much as what animation does, which is literally you have people who are able to sit there and spend 5 years debating a perfect angle on a frame. And I feel like this movie, more so than maybe some of the other animated movies that we've had over the last years, because I think in particular CGI animation has had a big boom over the last decade or so, is every single detail feels considered. And that's how you get like the perfect scenes where they're like the perfect amalgamation of the entire movie is built in that one scene that gets played over and over with this movie, which is Miles Morales jumping off of the building and leaping into the city as it like engulfs him.
Fucking,
the final leap of faith.
Also, I just want to add that there was, I think probably one of my favorite parts of the movie is like the beginning, or I guess halfway as well, when he's like singing Sunflower.
Yeah.
And he's like, just like how I would sing every song. I'm gonna know these 3 lines, and I'm just gonna like kind of half-ass sing the rest of the
I think
song.
we need an audition right now.
Yeah, please.
No,
Can you give us
good.
Sunflower, please? and the ultimate message, I guess, of his final lines are anyone could wear the mask, right? So it does, having Peter Parker or Miles Morales or whoever actually feel like an actual person, I think is probably the greatest feat of this, because up until then, it still all kind of felt superhero-y, if that makes any sense, where this is a person who is above and beyond, who is not a regular person you cannot compare yourself to. I think even in Marvel up until now, we have not felt that level of humanity in these characters until I think this film, because even like his they're in the laboratory and he's stuck to the thing and he's like, how do I relax? I gotta sing to myself, and then eventually he falls instead of catching himself, because he catches himself up in his own singing. Just like little attention to details of that, like, yeah, a normal person would make a mistake here.
Well, it's a perfect encapsulation of I think what this movie is trying to do, which is be more of a coming of age story instead of a like typical like hero story where they are really, actually it's more of a real classic hero story where the hero starts out as not the master of their environment.
Yeah.
And they go through a process of training to become the master. Whereas I feel like a lot of movies nowadays, they like get bit by the spider, get superpowers, and then they're automatically already able to do everything.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really make that much sense, and it's not as cinematic, and you're not as like engaged with the character.
Yeah.
And they're not relatable.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think going back to what you were talking about, the first scene, I think is so interesting, and what not enough movies are brave enough to do, which is they didn't start the movie until like maybe 30-40 minutes in, because he doesn't get bit until like I think around 30 minutes.
It's like 20-ish. I wouldn't say it's that far.
The movie's actually not that long. Right?
It's
like
it's
an hour and a
not very
half.
long.
So
Yeah.
But a big portion of it is dedicated to him before he's even attempting to be Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, why we feel so connected to Miles, because we can relate to him and all of his struggles personally.
Also, like when he finds out that Prowler is actually his uncle, like it felt, I remember in the movie theater when I first watched it, I was like, oh no, that's his uncle.
Yeah.
Like, that's because like you see that relationship, like he's, likes his uncle more than his father in some ways, and like he has a really close connection, and then like it's like his person you can always go to.
Yeah.
And then after a point where he becomes Spider-Man, he finds out that they're actually enemies. It's kind of like devastating to him and the viewer who's watching it. What's he gonna do? It's his uncle.
And then it doubles down and circles back around to that classic Spider-Man story, because his uncle is killed in front of him, much like your classic Uncle Ben, but there's still that complicated relationship where he was a villain, and then you lay on top of that his father, who is a police officer, and also anti-Spider-Man vigilanteism, that kind of deal. I actually do really quick want to talk about, I read a whole bunch of like reviews of the film. I was trying to find like negative reviews to see if there's like a contrast, because I love this film.
So was I.
Yeah.
I found one.
I also found only one that had any like actual cruft to it, and that was sort of on the cultural side of that, which I can get into in a sec. But I do think it was a smart move to have Miles's dad be a cop, because it does sort of play into that that cross cultural touchstone of sort of like BLM and Black Lives Matter and sort of the ACAB movement and all that stuff, the defund the police, but also that just sort of relationship between Spider-Man and police, that sort of like I think that plays well with the also interrelation between people of color and the police. But to circle back to the main critique that I read of this film, which I think holds some value, is that in the comic book Miles Morales, they put a little bit more emphasis on his cultural identity, where I don't think that plays in this film. I will say that wasn't the point of the film necessarily, which I get. But I do think that like we see sort of his culture at the very beginning when he's walking through the neighborhood on his way to school, and he like has those interactions, but we never see those specific interactions come back. It's after he becomes Spider-Man, he lives in the Spider-Man world and is sort of disconnected from his culture. You know, how does him being a Black Latinx person affect how he is Spider-Man? I don't think we ever see that.
Yeah.
Other than obviously the way he dresses, the music he listens to, that sort of thing, which I still think is important because that's why I relate to this movie so much. It's like, yeah, that's the music I listen to. Yeah, those are the clothes I would wear if I were Spider-Man, with the hoodie and all that stuff. Like, it's great. But I do think we do lose a little bit of that after the first act.
Do you think it comes up as like slightly shallow, or just something that they couldn't touch upon in the time frame?
With how delicately crafted this film is, I do think it was just something that was missed. I do think that like they put so much attention to detail in all of these other characters and all of these other aspects, but they forgot to put in the thing that makes Miles.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, I think we get a sum total of one line of him speaking Spanish, one line from his mother.
Yeah.
And we never see that side of him ever again.
Yeah.
We see a little bit of like his African American side and the Brooklyn side and the like teenage youth perspective from a person of color side, but it's all kind of referential. It's never explicitly talked about.
Yeah.
Which I think there is something sort of interesting there, because I think they're clearly hinting at a lot of things between the uncle, the father, Miles himself, the students that Miles interacts with at the like Visions preparatory school, and then also the minor glimpse we get of his old school.
Yes, the very small glimpse that we get of his old school, which I think there was one character at the very beginning that he had like an interaction with that I kind of wish we had gotten back to, because it was like a romantic connection that we never circled back around to. Maybe we'll circle back around to it in the second movie, but that was like such an interesting thing. I was like, because I know that Spider-Gwen's also in this, so there's just gonna be like a little conflict there, but I mean, there wasn't. We never circled back around to that.
I also thought it was interesting. I don't know, actually, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but the school he goes to, like the academy, isn't he like the only person of color in that school?
There were a few others, and his roommate is Asian.
Yeah,
that's true.
But that was another thing, is we don't ever, unlike like say the Marvel cinematic universe version, the live action with Tom Holland.
Yes,
who we do see him interact with his peers. We never see him really interact with his peers other than like them talking about him behind his back.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate, I think.
Well, I think that sort of plays into his isolation, like the isolation he feels. And then at the end, when he finally like talks to his roommate, I think that's supposed to be like him accepting like his situation.
And maybe we'll get that in the second one.
I think so. I think we have to.
One.
Or the third one, because there's two parts to the second one.
Oh, is there?
Maybe,
maybe
they're
part
gonna...
one and part two. I can already go ahead. You say what you're gonna say.
I was gonna say that, you know, with breaking up into two parts, hopefully they have more room to really kind of go into those details a little further, because they have a little bit more of a breathing room. I just hope it's not going to be like, you know, too weird jumping from like part one. It doesn't really feel like a complete story, and then going into part two where it's like,
can I say my called shot for the two movies? Part one is going to be animated as usual. It's going to be the same sort of structure and going to go into the 2099 world, I believe, is where the new story is supposed to take place. And then part two will be live action in the Marvel universe.
It's cross over?
Yeah, I think it's going to start crossing. I think because Multiverse of Madness hits this May, and then this part one comes out later this year, sort of in the same structure as Infinity War and Into the Spider-Verse 1. And then I think we'll get, as the after credit scene, when they all get sucked into whatever dimensional breakdown happens, we'll see live action Miles Morales in having some interaction in the Marvel world.
You heard it here first then, right?
That's my called shot.
And we kind of got a little bit of an idea of that when we saw the second post-credit scene in this movie. I think it's the second one, where we see the original comic strip meme.
Oh, yes, that is true. Yeah.
Which I think could be like a sneaky little reference to him to seeing Spider-Man transfer from one style of filmmaking to a
To
different
another.
style entirely.
I think it's possible.
I really hope so, because I want live action Miles Morales so
so bad.
Yeah,
Because
me
I've
too.
seen
That'd
him
be
animated. I just want to know who's gonna play him. I have so many theories.
I kind of want to segue into more of the ingredients / flavors, if you guys are okay with that.
I wanted to ask one question first.
Go ahead.
And this kind of is something we probably should have asked earlier.
Yeah, fine.
But I want to know why it is you chose this movie. Why this movie means so much to you, and why, because it's not just because it's well made.
Yeah.
There are plenty of well made films.
Oh yeah.
But like, what is it doing for you that it's the movie that is your favorite animated movie?
The reason why it is my favorite movie my favorite animated movie is sort of a list of compounding factors. But I think, like, to get some of the surface stuff out of the way, obviously it's well made, it's funny, it's has a lot of rewatchability. It's also like innovative. I think that's one thing that I feel like when you win Best Animated Feature for the Oscars or for whatever, I think innovation has to be a factor, because otherwise you're just sort of rewarding the same level. And I think this is something that pushed that further. But I think truly what makes this sort of one of my favorite movies is I was able to see myself as Spider-Man for once. This was the first time that, the Miles Morales character has sort of been this alternative, sort of like non-canonical. It was in the Ultimate Universe in the comic books. It was brought into the main level of comics eventually, but it was sort of this alt thing that we were able to sort of latch onto, and seeing that on the big screen, and then also just like the care that went into the cultural level. I mean, if you've ever listened to the Into the Spider-Verse album, it's a fucking banger. The music is so perfect. The cultural references that are there are super strong and feel super authentic. And it just really feels like the first, like, I saw Black Panther in February and I cried. It was the first Marvel movie I ever cried in. And then I saw this movie and I was like, I'm finally able to like see myself as a superhero. And that is something that, until I had seen these movies, I hadn't realized I hadn't actually felt before. But also just the way he talks. Like, he talks like people I know who talks, and like no other superhero has done that so far. And so it really is the small things, but it just like drew me in. I was able to pay closer attention. I was able to relate more. And I think that's just, it is a very important thing for film, because I think film is how we tell other people's stories, how we connect culturally. And for that to be displayed on there, it's like it normalizes it, it makes it more accessible, and it makes it enjoyable. So,
and that's kind of one of the points that we want to hit upon in this podcast, is that film, just like food, is kind of a cultural point that everyone can enjoy. I think it's a super important point. And the first time I had ever noticed something like that was probably Black Panther.
This movie is definitely super, I do think it is very, in a way diverse, for especially for like a Marvel film. I feel like is Miles Morales, I think, the second Spanish character as well in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Who would be the first?
Would be from Ant-Man, his friend.
Oh, I guess, but he's not really a superhero.
I mean, so even in the
whole
cinematic universe,
so.
There's not really much Spanish representation as well. I mean, I know that in the new Stranger Thing movie, there's going to be a Hispanic character.
Yeah,
as
Latinx
well.
representation is not. If you count,
I think strictly speaking, Marvel.
Yeah,
I think it's like the
Marvel.
the first Hispanic character that is on screen.
But also Jewish Spider-Man. Peter B. Parker was Jewish, and so I mean we got the full array there. We have
the porks.
Yeah.
You know what? I need to go back and watch the movie again, because I wonder if they do make a joke about the Peter Porker and Peter B. Parker, if they have any pork joke.
I didn't even think about that.
That would be very funny.
Yeah, I mean, cool. I think, but speaking of I kind of missed this segue actually, because we were just talking about
Yeah, we did go off on
so
that
kind of,
tangent. Whoops.
I kind of want to maybe rein it back a little bit. I kind of want to maybe spend the next little bit kind of
Diagnosing the flavors.
Yeah.
yeah,
Figuring out the flavors.
So going back to it, let me just really quickly say I want to bring in a few points here, and then we can interject, or tell me my idea is really dumb if you want me to, if you want to. But so I feel like there's a lot of flavors going on here for sure. I think some core ones are definitely going to be sweet, spicy, salty. Because I think and going back to it, salty would be like sad, because there's like definitely some sad moments in there.
Definitely.
It's
Opens up on a
some
pretty
great,
big bummer.
great drama,
Yeah.
which I think is wildly successful in this movie,
Yes.
given how actually little development we get.
Other
Than Miles. Miles has maximal development.
Yeah.
He's
But everyone else just
definitely
has one scene where they develop.
definitely a lot of happiness. There's a lot of sweetness going on in here, and there's also some spice with some surprise. I feel like, especially with introducing all these Spider-Men into the movie as well.
I would also say, like, just abstracting it from the actual plot itself, but just like the actual creation of it, there's a lot of, like, bagel is a good surprise. Like on rewatch you can catch some of those, and I think like even the little moments have a lot of surprise.
Yeah, but I also feel like it is a very diverse movie, and I think 2018 was also a great year for diversity, especially in like superhero movies on screen and everything. So I feel like this dish in a way has to also represent that as well. Initially when I was thinking about it, first thing that I kind of thought of was a dumpling. Now hear me out.
Okay.
Dumplings I feel like are so interesting, because pretty much every single culture around the world has their own specific dumpling.
Interesting.
And I feel like this dish is maybe a dumpling, or each like a plate of dumplings, but from different cultures. Because you have like Miles Morales, I believe his mom is Puerto Rican.
Yes.
And there's like Puerto Rican empanadas.
Okay.
You have like the Japanese character, you have gyoza. And then I guess Americans don't really have like a dumpling, but I guess maybe a hot dog maybe would be
pocket.
Or hot pocket.
Hot pocket is the American dumpling.
But Italian food would be like raviolis or something like that. Like I feel like each culture has like their own definition. Like I'm Polish, and in Poland we have pierogies, which is similar in a way as well. It's kind of like a mix between like a ravioli, I guess, or like it's kind of like an empanada but not deep fried. Oh, that's right. You've been to Chicago, right? So you've probably eaten Polish food.
I've had and also like Jamaican has what's called a beef patty, which is sort of like an empanada, except for it's cornmeal crust and then beef or whatever you want to put in it in the middle. It's very good.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about these dumplings is that they all have different flavor profiles. Like in Poland, for instance, there's like meat or like savory, but also there are other ones that are just filled with fruit and are like a dessert dumpling. So I feel like that kind of brings in this kind of like spicy, because a lot of them can have like different seasonings in it. But then also like there's a sweet dumpling. There's more savory or salty kind of dumplings as well.
I would push back on that only because I do think that although there is different flavors that are like a whole bunch of different flavors mixed into it, it is a cohesive product altogether.
That is true. And like all their kind of stories all mesh together and combine into one. I definitely agree with that.
If I could make a pitch, I was thinking just on the drive here, a ramen, but like one of those like super complex ramens that have like everything ramen. Because it does have, it has your egg, your fish, your pork, your chicken. It has like everything, but it all comes together. And every little thing still is like well made. Like your egg is well made. Your if you put bean paste in it, like for your sweet, that's well made, and your spicy, your chili is well made. I think that like it all comes together, even though it's a lot. Or if there's other, I don't know, other foods that have like a lot of different things in them, but all comes together.
I was also thinking like a gumbo as well.
Gumbo, that's actually a better example than a ramen. A gumbo is a really good
because I feel like you have a lot of these really like crab or shrimp or like there's so many different things in there that like by itself are also really good, but just throw them all into a pot with spices and everything, and like they just meld together and can make this like such a delicious dish.
And
I feel
the
like
gumbo itself is spicy, which I think this film in and of itself is a surprise.
Yes.
Yeah, because
it's like a surprise with flavors too, because there's so many different flavors that
and you were literally surprised after watching it.
I went in a completely different direction.
Okay.
I was thinking about hot dogs, and partially this might have accidentally been inspired by Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Okay.
I still have hot dog fingers on the brain.
Oh yeah.
But
I think I gotta watch this movie.
It's
I haven't watched
so
it yet.
It's wild. Anyway, so I was thinking hot dogs because it's Brooklyn, and Brooklyn is known for their hot dogs, and at least they're like street hot dog vendors. But I'm sort of leaning away from that. But I was thinking 6 hot dogs, one for each of the characters, you know, with their individual flavors. But I kind of agree with you that this is like a perfect mix. And so having the flavors all separated out doesn't really feel like the film. And also I agree with O'Neill that that this is such a premium product. It needs to be premium.
Yeah.
It needs to be like high class food, because this is such perfection.
But it also feels like something that you can watch and be like, wow, that's such a great product, but then also come back to it year after year, kind of like going back to see your grandma, and like having a home cooked meal, and like having that like, wow, this is like my family, this is my culture. What I do feel like going back to gumbo or something like that, like it kind of has that, like that's why I also saying dumplings, because pierogies was that for me. Like going for every holiday, my mom would make pierogies, and like it has like that cultural flavor in a way to it, which I do feel like, again, I'm maybe starting to push more of this gumbo idea.
I really am like feeling the gumbo because it is also sort of it can have lobster, and it can also have crawfish. Like it can have that high quality. It's high concept, but it's still accessible. And I think that's another thing, is like this is a very well made and artistic film, but is also the most accessible. Like my mom loves this movie, and she hates animated movies. Like it is like a widely accessible.
Elitist.
Yes, exactly. Right. It's not elitist, but it is high quality.
I think what I was touching upon is the precision of it, and I feel like the food needs to like
gumbo can definitely get like you can there's definitely a clear difference between like you can make really bad gumbo even if you put the best ingredients in there. You know,
it requires everything in perfect balance, which I think
and that is a really important thing, because you don't want to have like too much spice or too little spice, or you know, like the amount of time you cook it, or you know, even like adding in the seafood, and like you don't want to like overcook it and kind of just ruin it. I think there is a really fine balance of it, and between how you make the dish. And
I also think in the same style as gumbo, it is a communal food. It's like a communal make, and I think when you have all these different cultures being represented in a film like this, it does have sort of that communal feel of like everybody gets a seat at the gumbo table. Come on, sit down, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that also definitely has that in this film.
Yeah, it's definitely, you know, oh man, I lost my word. I think I was gonna say like it's very stylized. What was I gonna say? Oh man, I don't know. I totally just blanked out what I was gonna say. Whoops. Well, cutting that out. But
well, there's sort of like a Creole nature to this food as well, which I think also translates to this movie, which is this like cultural mashup of so many different influences from, in this movie, everything from Japanese to 1950s noir to the like contemporary youth street culture.
Yeah.
Like there's so much going on, and a lot of Creole foods have that in them as well, because they are literally mixes of different cultures all happening in a single pot.
So yeah.
So do we have any idea of a name for the dish?
Oh, I didn't know you guys come up with a name.
Oh, we try to.
Usually a pun.
Yeah.
Not necessarily clever.
Give me a sec.
The gumbo verse.
Into the gumbo verse.
That is also something I was thinking about. Spider Dash Man
into this gumbo dash verse. Is there what other foods are actually in this movie? There's bagel. That's a classic.
bagel. We should put like little bagel chunks.
Little bagel chunks in it. I mean, yeah, you can do a side of bread.
Mm-hmm. Is there going to be pork in this?
Ooh, well, sausage.
A little bit.
Uh-oh. Peter Porker. Sorry, man.
The pig is actually a spider who got bit by a radioactive pig. So he's actually a spider if we really want to.
Yeah, true. I mean, I feel like we could just call it Peter Porker Gumbo.
Peter Porker Gumbo.
I feel like, because then it'll be a question of like, did Peter Porker make it, or is he an ingredient of it?
I love that. That's very good.
I think, that could be it.
Peter Porker Gumbo verse.
Yeah, Peter Porker
Into the Gumbo verse.
Into the Gumbo verse.
Overall, I feel like this movie is great, and now I want to both rewatch this movie and also eat gumbo tonight.
Yeah.
So
might be a gumbo night and a rewatch.
Any last things you want to say about the movie, or like things you haven't said yet?
If I am correct about Into the what is the new Spider-Man movie
Across
called?
the Spider-Verse?
Across the Spider-Verse Part 2, I will be expecting my paycheck, Sony. But yeah, it's a fantastic movie. It's a great watch. If you haven't seen it yet, what the fuck are you doing? It's probably the most. I want to say it had some influence on where Marvel's going now. So just the success of the multiverse stuff must have led Marvel to where it's going now. So I haven't seen the new Doctor Strange yet, but when that comes out, you'll probably be able to draw some comparisons there. But Into the Spider-Verse did it first, man.
It's been a pleasure to have you on, O'Neill.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Where can we find you?
Yeah,
you can find me.
Please give me your address.
Yeah, I live in Palms, Los Angeles, California. Now, you can find me on my D&D podcast. You might be wondering how we got here. It's a Dungeons and Dragons podcast that is sound designed. You can also find me doing sound stuff. O'Neill Henry Productions is the name of my little side production company. And probably just like in LA, I go to karaoke sometimes. So if you go to karaoke and just yell my name, you'll probably find me.
What's your favorite karaoke song?
Oh God, what is my favorite karaoke song? I like Umbrella. What is it?
Umbrella
by Rihanna. That's a class. Because everybody gets into it. Everybody knows it.
100%.
I'm definitely more of a show tune guy at karaoke.
I'm gonna sit at the back and pretend I'm Simon Cowell kind of guy.
Oh yeah, do the judging. Give people little printout tickets to a flight to
You're going to Hollywood.
It's about a 30-minute drive. Come on.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, great movie, and a great dish. We came down to gumbo, and I think I do really like it. I do feel like it makes sense for this movie, and yeah, like I said, I just want to eat gumbo now and watch this movie and just kind of wrap up in a blanket or something.
Oh God, yeah.
Cool. Well, on that note, anything you want to say, Chase? Where can we find you, Chase? On this podcast.
on this podcast.
All right. Until next time, everyone. That's a wrap. Bye-bye.
We need to work on our food.
Yeah, we need to work. All All right. Well, and that's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and that is a wrap.
And that this was and is a wrap. Ding ding.